Hospital porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order. Welcome to Hapanwo TV. And welcome to this. It's a reply video to Sargon of Akkad. Now, the last time I actually replied to the YouTube and video online creator, Carl Benjamin, also known as Sargon of Akkad, was quite a while ago actually. It was in 2018 when he made a video about the Space Force, and I was compelled to put photos onto celluloid at that point, photons onto celluloid, to tell him what I thought of what he said, and I've done it again. Now, Sargon is, I suppose he came out of the kind of Gamergate anti-SJW community, and I've always liked him. I've always admired him. I like his videos. I respect what he does. I do not agree with everything he says, such as today, but generally I think he's a good guy. Well, he has made a very interesting video about something I talked about on yesterday. Oh, on the last video I did, which was Boris in hospital. Oh, by the way, Boris appears to be getting better, which is really, really good. He's responding to treatment while he's in intensive care, and he hasn't needed a he hasn't needed a ventilator, by the way. But at the same time, as you remember, that same day, David Icke was on London Real, and as I explained on the video yesterday, that video was immediately censored by YouTube. Now, I believe, based on the fact that it was disappearing from other locations as well, including at one point it disappeared from London Real's website, this wasn't just an act of YouTube censorship, this was an intelligence hit. Probably GCHQ or somebody had done that. But YouTube has since come forward and they've said they did censor the video. There's been a news story about it, about how they've decided to amend their rules, as I talked about yesterday, for people who spread false, quote-unquote, information about the connection between the coronavirus and a certain mobile phone network. And sod it, it's 5G. I'm not thought about how to handle this, whether I should just not mention 5G at all, because as Sargon said, videos are going to be removed just simply for mentioning 5G and COVID-19 in the same upload. Well, I'm not going to. I think well, as far as YouTube goes, it's better just to just say it and be damned. I mean, if this video disappears from YouTube, by the way, it'll be on BitChute, and I'll make another video explaining what happened if this video disappears for any reason. Okay. So, but he's made a video, it's just a short video about that, about what happened to David Icke, and about the censorship being committed against people who have certain opinions about 5G and COVID-19. So, let's start with Sargon's video. Go back to the beginning. I've got some notes here. There's so much in this video, I've put timestamps on it, but they're hardly even needed because I'm going to have to comment on almost everything he says.
I'm genuinely amazed at the coronavirus 5G conspiracy theories. I never saw this coming. I didn't think there was going... I mean, I love conspiracy theories.
Okay. I did see something like this coming because of what people were saying before, the recent news stories about the mobile phone towers that have been attacked. So I did sort of see this coming, but I didn't expect the clampdown we've had to be so extreme. But Sargon says he loves conspiracy theories.
I watch as many conspiracy theory videos as possible.
I bet he watches mine as well, because because of the reply videos I made to him.
I think they're all nonsense. They're very entertaining to me. But this one is one that I just...
Hang on a minute, they're all nonsense. So, do you realise how many conspiracy videos there are out there? Do you remember the reply videos I've made to you, Sargon, about various things? Saying they're all nonsense is well, it's more than a sweeping statement, isn't it? That's a complete generalization of the entire subject of so-called conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories is a term I don't mind using, it's literally true. But it was a term invented. It was invented in a psychological warfare operation. It was unknown before 1964, and the reason was that was when the Warren Commission published its report. So the CIA needed some kind of label to slap on people who didn't believe the official story, which was that Oswald acted alone. So they said, well, they came up with this term conspiracy theorist and conspiracy theory to describe people who thought that there was a conspiracy involving the Kennedy assassination, and hence the term has stuck, and it's still used today in exactly the same way. But anyway, Sargon. So Sargon, interestingly, Sargon used to be a conspiracy theorist. He has actually let it slip that he used to. It's really funny actually because he hasn't talked much about it, but he used to be a 9/11 truther, and now he just mentions, "Oh, I was a 9/11 truther once, but now I've sort of like I've had a look at it all, and I think it's all rubbish." I mean, it's very different to Charlie Veitch, of course. Charlie Veitch is an ex 9/11 truther, but his own story, the fact that he went back and started believing in the official story again, very mistakenly, I should add. He talks about it in some detail. He's done a couple of interviews, including quite a long one, an hour-long one with Miles. What's his name? Miles Power, whatever his name is, the skeptic. What's his name actually? I've never heard of him for a while. I just looked at it. But he did a long interview with Miles Power. It is Miles Power. I just want to get that right. Yeah, Power M 1985. Yeah, God, blimey, he's still going. He did a video a week ago. Good grief. He's one of my favourite YouTube skeptics. Yeah, it really is. But yeah, I haven't watched him for ages. But he did a long video with him explaining his reasons. Now, Sargon never has done that. Sargon, basically just all he said is he was a 9/11 truther, now he's not anymore. Just look at it now, I don't think it's true. Well, that's not good enough. You know, if you're going to change your mind about something, it's just saying, "Well, I've changed my mind, that's it." It really doesn't really cut much ice, does it? It makes you wonder, well, have you really? Unless you can actually explain your thought process to someone else, you have to realise people are going to be rather cynical about it, as I am. Anyway, carry on, Sargon.
Thought was just total nonsense. So to start with,
hang on, they are total nonsense.
I don't know anything about 5G really. I'm not a scientist, I don't follow this, but there is a lot of panic because of a particular photo that was going around with apparently a guy with a hazmat radiation suit. Now Snopes,
this was on Snopes. I don't know the origins of this, but there's a picture of a guy. He's on a cherry picker, and he's wearing some kind of protective clothing, and he appears to be an engineer working on some kind of antenna. I don't know if it's you see, a lot of the things that people say are 5G antennas are actually not. They're other things. 5G antennas actually can be very small. They can even fit inside a lamppost. I mean, it's pretty awful when you think about it, but this is one of the reasons that they can put them up anywhere without planning permission, which is pretty appalling. They could put one in they could be hidden in a tree, in a traffic light, inside a bollard, almost anywhere. So they're often very small. There are some larger ones, but I'm not sure the origins of this photograph. I'm not sure. And anyway, carry on, Carl. Let's hear some more.
Have gone through and they are actually sourcing what they're saying here. So I'm going to trust it more than I otherwise might, especially on their particular political things. But apparently, the 5G radio waves.
Sargon's getting a bit ahead of himself here. What he means to say is that Snopes have found pictures of people working on 5G masts not wearing protective clothing. Now, it's true. Well, they've got a hard hat, you know, the usual thing that people wear, but they've got like just normal clothing, normal sort of work clothes on. But again, it doesn't. There's nothing that indicates in this photograph either that what we're seeing is an engineer on a 5G antenna. I mean, antennas like this are everywhere. You remember the first generation of mobile phone masts? They look like they look rather like combine harvester blades. Do you remember, sort of upright on top of posts? I remember there was a big fuss about one outside school. And these were also like the tetra mast that the police used for their communications. Then they turned into these things that look like. There's still a few of them around actually. This is the 4G masts, I think. They look a bit like electric toothbrushes sticking in the ground. You may have seen a few of those. They're still around. That's 4G. And there's several other instances like that. But what we're looking at here is simply an engineer working on some kind of antenna. It's like some kind of aerial. I can't see what it is. And so Snopes, in a sense, don't prove their point any more than they debunk the point they're trying to debunk. Or indeed, we don't. I'm not saying for certain that the thing which irked everyone and got people riled up was a 5G guy with 5G mask with a with protective clothing. We don't know. Or if it was, what was that protective clothing for? Because you see, when it comes to radiation, the kind of clothing you can wear really can only protect you from alpha and beta particles. I'll let Sargon carry on.
Are not do not have enough energy to break apart the bonds between your atoms in your body. So it's not ionizing radiation as it's called, and apparently this particular suit doesn't protect against that anyway.
Right, yeah, that's true. As I was saying, the suits, first of all, you see people wearing some kind of all over body suit with a gas mask, rubber gloves, Wellingtons. The chances are that is a chemical. That's to protect them from some kind of chemical danger or radioactive particles. Now this is something we discussed actually in the Apollo Detectives video. That because some people were claiming that, well, the astronauts, the spacesuits that the astronauts wore would protect them from radiation. So it didn't matter that they were out there being subjected to cosmic rays or solar radiation out on the moon. They'd be perfectly safe because they had these suits on, these radiation-proof spacesuits. And it turns out actually the spacesuits would protect them from particles, from charged particles such as alpha and beta particles. But when it comes to X-rays and gamma rays, that wouldn't work. You need some kind of shield which involves usually some kind of heavy metal like lead, water, like large amounts of water and things like that. So that's actually correct. Now, this is a common feature. People say, well, there's no danger from these kind of cellular transmissions, none at all, because they're in the microwave band, which is essentially a form of microwave at very, very high amplitudes. It's used to cook food, of course. At lower amplitudes, it's basically harmless because it's very low energy. That's actually it's non-ionizing radiation is the term they use. However, it's not true. It's completely untrue. Now I'm not going to go into all the details here, but there is a danger from non-ionizing radiation. I do suggest you go to stopthecrime.net. This is Deborah Tavares' website. Check out the videos and other articles she's written about smart meters, about 5G, about all these other things. She did a very good interview about smart meters. I do very much recommend that. Stopthecrime.net. Also, check out Barry Trower. Now, Barry Trower has written about all kinds of things to do with radiation. Now, he's a former government scientist, worked for the Ministry of Defence. Barry, that's spelled B-A-R-R-I-E, and Trower, T-R-O-W-E-R. And he talks about these transmissions and how they interfere with the human brain, because your brain is an electrical machine. Your brain works by electrical signals moving between neurons. That's the nerve cells. There are billions of these neurons inside your brain, and while some people there's fewer. Certain politicians I could mention, but most people have millions and millions and billions of them. And the signals move between the neurons, and that basically allows the brain to function. And that the non-ionizing radiation interferes with that. Barry Trower said here, 5G was tested in Russia on humans and animals with disturbing results. Now, he says 5G. It's actually a long time ago. This happened during the era when it was the Soviet Union in the 1970s, and they didn't. There was no 5G in those days, but they tested signals of a similar type. They said the humans suffered were subjected to this. They tested it on animals first, and then humans. They used to use political prisoners for this sort of thing in the Soviet Union. They had lots of human subjects, but they said that humans end up suffering from metabolic problems. That means metabolic means the way our body produces energy from food and oxygen. Blood problems, the blood immune system dysfunction. That's very important. I'll be coming back to that. Severe medical and neurological problems. With the animals, they found that the bone marrow was suffering, and that's basically what produces your immune system. Respiration damage, that's your lungs and things like that. Enzyme activity, that's bad because it messes up your hormones. Nuclear DNA, that's very worrying because that can produce things like cancer, and it can produce hereditary diseases like you got in the Vietnam War with Agent Orange. I'm not going to read this entire article here, but do look at the stuff that Barry Trower's done. He's done an interview with Mark Steele. He's done lectures at various places. Please do check out the things he's done for UK Column. There's a huge amount. You don't need me to do your research for you. You can find out for yourself. If you look into it, you really look into it, and you conclude there's no danger to 5G. Honestly, that's up to you. But Sargon clearly hasn't done that. Sargon is simply, basically, he says himself he's not an expert on this. Well, neither am I. You don't have to be an expert. The information is there. You don't need to have a label on you which says expert or a qualification or something to look at information and analyse it. But Sargon hasn't done that. I'll let him carry on anyway.
And of course, you can find photos of people installing these who are not wearing suits. So I'm guessing that perhaps there is something more that needs to be looked into there. Uses nearly the same frequency as weaponized crowd control systems, like the active denial systems that the US military have developed. Again, these are not lethal.
That's not the point. That's not the point. Now, the active denial control systems. Now, this is something that has been adopted in various places, not just the American military. It's been brought up by several armed forces and police forces around the world. I think the FBI are testing it at the moment in the United States. It's a system where there's a transmitter that transmits very high energy microwaves at people. It basically and what the effect of it hitting you when you're subjected to this. I mean, I think who was it? I think it was Louis Theroux. He agreed. He volunteered to be targeted by one of these devices, and he said he went like that. And Miles Power did as well. Yeah, Miles Power. It's funny we just mentioned Miles Power. He did at one point too. It's like being struck. He said it was like being punched on every part of his body at the same time. And you completely incapacitates you. It's rather like a taser, which is also non-lethal. Now, it's true that this active denial system is not lethal. It basically just incapacitates people, and this is why the government are so interested to use it for crowd control. Because if there's a riot or there's a very noisy demonstration and people are like protesting, they can turn it on them and basically knock them to the floor. Which I'm sure they would have done that at the Brexit protest if they could have done. The point is, though, the active denial system is not something that you are subjected to continuously. It's something that just hits you once and then it's over. They switch it off and then the police come and they handcuff you. What we're looking at here in 5G network is a background. It's lower energy, but it's a background atmosphere. It's like an ether of electromagnetic radiation, non-ionizing, high frequency, low energy electromagnetic radiation that surrounds us continuously when we're awake, when we're asleep, wherever you are. Well, if you live in an area where 5G started. Now, you can actually check for 5G just using this. Just using your normal mobile phone. I'll just switch it. I've had it on aeroplane because I've been at work. But you can actually check for 5G signals wherever you are. So I'm going to do that just now. I'll let Sargon carry on.
That's the point. They're just unpleasant, and I'm sure that they are.
Yeah, the active denial system is unpleasant, Sargon. But if it was a lower energy, it would surround you continuously. It wouldn't be. Maybe it would be less It wouldn't be quite so non-lethal. Indeed, it's interesting that the taser is called. I mentioned the taser, didn't I? The taser is called a non-lethal weapon. It was devised by the DARPA, the Department of Advanced Research Project Agency, which includes such people as Colonel John Alexander, who's the guy who researched John Hutchison, people like that. And well, I think there's over 20 people have been killed by the taser since its invention. In fact, it's been used everywhere now, including Dalian Atkinson, who was a footballer. He was only 49, I think. He was tasered by some policemen. He used to play for Aston Villa. He was tasered by a policeman and died of a heart attack. So that's not really very non-lethal, is it? That's not non-lethal. Right, let's just have a look what we got here. So if you've got a phone, if your phone, most people have a phone, which I won't show you it actually, because it's private. But I'm just going to have a look at what the Wi-Fi signals in my area. Now, if they have 5G after them, and this changes every so often as people walk past and things like that. But every so often you get that down. I'm connected to the main hub in our home, not my own router, which is separate, as I explained in previous videos. But if it says 5G, then you've picked up a 5G signal. Now, this is where Steve Mumbling goes wrong as well, because Steve Mumbling tried to claim... Well, I don't need to repeat myself, do I? Yeah, he just said that it was, damaging a 5G tower, a 5G transmitter is going to be it's going to cut off the infrastructure. It means that people with coronavirus can't get to their doctor and things like that. Well, actually, that only counts if it's an active one. If it's an active part of the communications grid, then yes. But these are towers that have just been installed. But anyway, let's start. So that's not quite accurate, Steve. Well, let's start and carry on.
But all of this has been put together by one David Icke.
Now we get to it. David Icke. So what's Sargon got to say about David Icke?
I don't know who David Icke is. I think it's 1988, something
More people know who David Icke is than know who Carl Benjamin is.
like that. He was in the 80s. He was a football commentator, and a popular one, because he's a good speaker and he's a charismatic guy to listen to, which explains his popularity now. But in the 80s, he went on TV wearing a shell suit and declared himself to be the reincarnation of Jesus.
No, he didn't. The shell suit, it was actually 1992, not the 80s. He said he was the son of the Godhead, which is very different to being the son of God. This was a big misunderstanding and a simplification of everything David said in his early days as coming out as an alternative thinker, where by David's own admission, he was not quite in his right state of mind. He admits that. He said he was the son of the Godhead. People kind of interpreted that saying he was basically the second coming of the Messiah, like you get in the Judeo-Christian mythology and in the eschatology, things like that. That's completely false. Anyway, carry on, Sargon.
on live TV, and everyone was like, "Oh, really? That's very interesting."
It was the Wogan show in 1992. Yes.
He's cuckoo, but
of course, well, they're going to respond like that, aren't they? What was it? How does that Japanese phrase go? There's a famous Japanese proverb. Those who danced were thought insane by those who couldn't hear the music.
in the meantime, he's made a very, very big name for himself. He's got a very large following on social media and with his books that
very richly deserved, I might add.
Are full of really kooky conspiracy theories.
Kooky? What's kooky, right? That's an odd adjective, Sargon, for someone who you yourself have been called all kinds of names. You've been called a racist and a misogynist, a fascist, all these things you've been called. And you always complain about how these are badly applied labels with Orwellian meaning. Now you're saying kooky to describe a book. I mean, the books. I mean, I've got some of his books here. I haven't read all of them, but I don't know anyone. Is there anyone out there who's read every single one of David's books? I don't know. I've read all of them up to the Global Conspiracy book. After that, I sort of thought I didn't feel the need to get any new books of his. But what exactly? I mean, maybe it'd be a good idea to do like a 2-hour video going through some of David's basic ideas. I mean, even Marlon Solomon did that. Even Marlon Solomon, if you remember my video about him and that idiot who's been slagging David off, calling him anti-Semitic and things like that. All right, even he did not ignore David. Even he addressed some of David's ideas. So just saying it's kooky in a video that's 11 minutes 44 seconds long, that's beneath your usual standards, Carl. It really is.
I tend not to follow David Icke because, in my opinion, he's just way off base.
Oh, way off base now, is it? It's kooky, way off base. You don't follow him because he's way off base. How do you know if you haven't followed him? How do you know if you haven't looked at just some of the things that he says? I
don't think he's correct on anything, really.
Oh, really? Anything? Again, how much have you looked at, Sargon? How much? Go on, tell us how much you've looked. How much have you examined what David has to say? Because you I mean, even I wouldn't say that about people. These people I don't agree with. I don't say, well, they're wrong about everything. I say they're wrong about certain specific things, which I address.
But this has got a lot of, this is connected to this, connected to this, connected to this, and it reminds me very much of the Alternative Influencer Network, where somehow, because I've spoken to Richard Spencer and I've also spoken to Joe Rogan, that makes Ben Shapiro a Nazi, and things like this.
That is a complete misrepresentation of what David says in terms of the connections that he comes up with. He doesn't. It's not like this kind of like degrees of separation stuff which you referred to. Well, that's what Sargon said there is absolutely true about how he's been treated. But that's not what David Icke does. You just have to look at what he says, and you'll see.
It's total nonsense. I'm sorry. I know there are going to be people who believe this stuff.
Yeah, that's right. A lot of your viewers, actually.
I really don't think there is any viable linkage here at all. But
Example, please.
There are so many different strands that have been pulled in of hypothetical connections. Oh, this was mentioned somewhere else or something like this. There are several different molds of this theory.
He's being a bit incoherent now. You may have noticed he's tripping over his words and stuttering slightly. He's trying to make a point and doesn't know how. Well, like I said, Sargon, do a 2-hour video, address some of David's ideas. If you just address some of them, just a handful of them, and give them a proper rational deconstruction. I mean, I can do that with the flat Earth. You can do that with David Icke.
The most convincing one, I would say, is that 5G is a way to reduce the effectiveness of people's immune systems so they become susceptible to this virus. Now, again, I have absolutely no proof for this. No proof is provided in this article. And so I don't think that this is something we can believe. It seems like total nonsense. And obviously...
It seems like total nonsense. I mean, I'll be addressing this point in a moment, but just let him finish his point.
And that's at its most charitable interpretation, I would say. Obviously, there's no other connection between an infectious disease and radio waves.
Okay. Now, I should make my point. I mean, I did make this point earlier because several people have written to me asking about this, because there's an idea going around the conspiracy sphere at the moment, which is that the COVID-19 disease is not caused by any kind of virus. It is caused simply by our response to 5G transmissions. This is not true. There is a coronavirus. It is causing this disease, and that's without any doubt, in my view. The coronavirus is appearing everywhere. It's appearing in places which have no 5G transmissions yet. 5G hasn't been rolled out yet in that area. It's very obvious, the symptoms and the way it transmits. It's a virus, but there is a big but. 5G, as I've explained, is an electromagnetic weapon. And as I read that article from Barry Trower, he refers specifically to immune system response and the fact that as long ago as the 70s in Russia, they were doing experiments on animals and humans, which indicated that certain levels and certain types of non-ionizing radiation of the same kind that's now being suggested for the 5G network did have a detrimental effect on immune system response. If your immune system response is lowered, you are more likely to catch a disease, any kind of disease, and that disease is more likely to do you harm than if you had a fully functioning immune system. It's not nonsense at all. It's perfectly logical. We can anticipate 5G having an effect on coronavirus sufferers and the susceptibility of people to coronavirus on that theoretical ground. So the people who say there's a connection between 5G and coronavirus, they're half right. And that's enough to get my video removed, I'm sure. It'll be on BitChute if you can't see it here,
or whatever microwaves, whatever they are using. Again, I'm not a scientist, but there's no possible connection as far as
they are cellular microwave transmissions. That means they have digital data encoded in them.
As anyone credible can see, as far as I can tell. But this is being shared quite far and wide, not just by David Icke, but famous sports stars and stuff like this. And it's got to the point.
Oh dear. Dangerous not to. It's like YouTube. When YouTube took down David Icke and they made a press release, they talked about false information without presenting any evidence or any argument at all. They just said this is false information because we say it is. It's like the Ramonas going, Britain should stay in the EU because we say so. That's what I mean. This is what I mean by the post-rational, post-moral world. You don't have. It doesn't matter now if you're right or wrong. It doesn't matter. It's all about who has the ability to project their will, and there's a large number of people who don't care what's true or not, and they don't care what's fair or not.
The point where people are now setting fire to the 5G masts. I mean, I can't explain how much I am against people just randomly setting fire to these things.
Well, you know what? I agree. I am actually. In fact, I should point out right now that I'm not. I'm very insist that all my viewers obey the law, and that includes committing criminal damage. As I said, there's been a number of attacks on masts, antennas under construction, or may not be 5G antennas. We don't know for certain, and I think that's a mistake. However, if these are electromagnetic weapons, something has to be done. If these are being put, it seems that the work on installing these antennas is going on, even through the lockdown. Now, is that essential? What we're told is, what the government are telling us is, the lockdown is something where basically everyone stays at home unless they're going to work. The only people who are allowed to go to work are people who have to run essential services, such as the health service, such as security, such as transport and things like that. And not all the transport networks have been reduced. And that's kind of like that's it basically. That's it. I mean, obviously, I have to take care of dogs and things like that in people's houses. A lot of my clients are old. I consider myself a key worker, which is why I'm working at a reduced level myself. Okay, so why is it in the midst of all this, in this state of emergency, this in this where we're essentially under martial law of a type, these what's it, Huawei, the Chinese company that's installing this infrastructure, is still allowed to go about its business? That's a valid question, and it should be probed into. And if they're doing that, and if there is danger involved in the transmissions, we have to protect ourselves. We have to do something to protect ourselves. Again, I'm not advocating breaking the law here, but there has to be something we can do within the law to protect ourselves.
This is not going to end well. I mean, A, it's dangerous, B, you're going to get yourself in trouble, and C, it's probably based on nonsense. But man, this is really going. Like, look at this. So the clapping is actually something that the government has set up to cover the construction work that is being set up the 5G network. Dude, that's being done in public. Like, there's no cover up about.
Sargon, I'll skip this bit. Hang on, where am I now? Yeah, I'll go forward a little bit. But I just say that. I don't need to see that. There is a theory going around that the clapping for the NHS. Every 8 p.m. at 8 p.m. every Thursday, people go out and they clap for the healthcare, clap for carers and things like that. That's all designed to drown out the noise of the engineers. They have to do, when they're putting up the 5G antennas, they have to do a certain thing at a certain point, and which makes noise. And I can't remember exactly what the details were. Sargon explains it in the video. You can check out the link in the description box of the videos. And I have put a link to the BitChute link as well as the YouTube, just in case Sargon's YouTube copy goes down. Basically, so the government has organised the clapping at 8 p.m. to cover up the noise of whatever these engineers are doing. Right, well, that is nonsense. That is flat earth stuff. Firstly, there's no evidence that the clap for the NHS ritual was started from the top. It was not suggested by anyone high up. It seems to have emerged at a grassroots level, just like the rainbows. I mean, I've had people saying, "Oh, the rainbows you see everywhere. That's cultural Marxist propaganda because it's like symbolising LGBT, or it's mind control." No, it's not. These things do emerge spontaneously as internet memes, which then go viral and they're picked up by other people. It's nothing to do. It's not. These ideas don't seem to originate from someone within maybe Huawei or someone like that who says, or someone within the government saying, "What we're going to do? Let's put this thing out, see if we get us hold. Let's clap at 8 p.m. every Thursday, and that's when we'll do the noisy stuff on the construction sites." No, there's no evidence of that at all.
It doesn't make sense. And
no, he's right there. I do agree with Sargon. It doesn't make sense.
Conspiracy. Why has the Prime Minister got it? Like, why would he allow himself to be infected or affected by this evil conspiracy that's designed to hurt the population?
This is a common complaint I often hear from skeptics. Why do they do these things which affect everyone? For instance, chemtrails as well. They say this about chemtrails. Why do they have chemtrails because and these other things, because the Illuminati have to breathe the same air as everyone else, just as the Illuminati therefore have to live under the electromagnetic smog of 5G too. Now that's the reason why is that they may have some way of protecting themselves, which the rest of us don't get. For example, we know they have access to anti-cancer medication that generally people don't have. A lot of the things that are banned, the anti-cancer drugs and things like that, are banned. I've done entire videos on that, the cancer cures and things like that. But this may well be something similar. It may well be they have some kind of thing which protects them from this. But so again, I agree with Sargon here. It doesn't make sense because, of course, Boris Johnson has come down with it. And yes, I know. I mean, I'll tell you what. When I published my article and I did an article about this, and I did the video you saw yesterday, and I did it in 3 stages on Facebook. Oh, the comments I was getting. Exactly the ones I predicted. Carl Ben, can't you see it? Why do you support? Why can't you see it? He's just another insider. He's the Illuminati, and here you are supporting him. You've been taken in by this. No, all the usual stuff. No, I'm not going to repeat myself now, but I don't believe that's the case. And this again is more evidence, I think. I was actually concerned that they might use this as an excuse to kill him off. Actually, Boris. Once Boris is in hospital, basically, if you go into hospital, they can do what they like with you. I mean, they've got all kinds of people in there. I've seen it on the inside, mate. I've seen how people are there, and well, it only takes a couple of dodgy doctors and nurses, and there are a lot of those, I can tell you, or just some that are just a bit too obedient to authority. People can be made to die. They can be made to disappear. Oh yeah, you got to watch it when you go in hospital. You really do. If you're one of these people who they don't like, you've got to watch it. So I was concerned for Boris's health. Now, luckily, as I said, Boris appears to be getting over it. He's responding to treatment. But I did wonder, I'd wonder what would happen. I really did. So I agree with Sargon's point here. I really do.
Of all the people who wouldn't get it, surely the Prime Minister is one of them. And just to say, Boris is apparently in intense...
Well, that doesn't necessarily follow, but yeah, I understand Carl's point. Carl is saying, there must be people within the system who you think would be protected, and he's right. And he sees Boris Johnson as one of them. I don't necessarily, but the point is, you do get some famous people have, and some senior people have actually come down with this. I mean, we've had a lot of people in government who've had it and risked being killed. There's a couple of famous people who died of it. Eddie, well, I wouldn't call him elite, but Eddie Large has died. There's this guy, somebody Prentice. He's chairman of Lancashire Cricket Club. That's it. Cricketers want to rule the world.
It was intense care last night, but it's apparently not on a ventilator, and he's not worsening, which is good news. Obviously, get well soon, Boris, and if you're a leftist shitheel who's wishing him dead, then you have problems.
Yes, I should point out that there's some... I'll let Sargon carry on a bit, because I want to make a point here about this.
If Jeremy Corbyn was the one with the virus, I would not wish him dead. Jeremy Corbyn is an idiot, but he's not someone I want to see dead. And I think that there is a fundamental lack of humanity to wishing your political opponents dead. It's just something if we go down that road, we may as well just start fighting in the streets, and I really don't want to see that happen. But
I agree with Sargon completely on this, and this is another point I want to make. This is the gloating of people who... This was sometimes when something happens to someone, you get a lot of people gloating and being nasty and being glorifying and being very vainglorious about the misfortune of the people who've come down with this, because they don't like them. They have this kind of schadenfreude. For example, what was it? What was his name? There's this guy called Baked Alaska. He was a YouTuber, and he used to be on the alt-right, but now he's kind of changed a bit. But he got actually blinded by somebody sprayed some chemical in his face at a protest, and everyone was saying, "Oh, just hope he dies," and things like this. As it happens, he recovered his eyesight. It was only temporary, but I just thought that was incredibly cruel. I can't think of anyone who I would, at least, there's family issues, shall I say that? People within my family, it's another matter. But in terms of public figures, there's nobody I think I would dance on their graves if they died, and do it publicly and do it cruelly, and project my hatred of them onto the people at large. I really wouldn't. I mean, say Professor Brian Cox, if his time came, as it will, or when his time comes, if it's before me, if his time comes before me, you won't hear a word out of me about it. I mean, the worst I'll do is I'll remain silent and I won't say anything. But like Jeremy Corbyn, if Jeremy Corbyn caught it and died, I would not. I would not gloat about it. I really wouldn't. Sargon is absolutely right. It is dehumanising to ourselves to glorify in any form of misfortune of others, or unless it's something they truly deserved. And there are few people who have suffered misfortune and they truly deserve it. Certain Ramona MPs and people like that. That's a different matter. But something like a disease like COVID-19. If Jeremy Corbyn caught it, if he was killed by it, I would not be happy about that. I really wouldn't. And Sargon is right. It is. There's something subhuman about that. And funny enough, I think it was the mayor of Henna. Now Henna is a town I think it's in Nottinghamshire. Oddly enough, it used to be sort of heartland of the National Front years ago. The mayor of Henna, who's a Labour Party member, tweeted something horrible saying that Boris deserved COVID-19, and she's been suspended from the Labour Party. I mean, goodness me, you have to be pretty extreme to get suspended from the Labour Party these days. They don't kick people out for nothing. I just commented when I saw this on social media. I commented that they shouldn't have done that. They should have just kept her in, because basically the Labour Party deserve her. But yeah, absolute, what he called them, shit healers. Yes, absolute walking filth, these people. So I agree with Sargon totally on that. Anyway, he's now going to continue onto a different subject. So let's just. Oh, let me just check my. I'm just going to check my notes. Yeah. Oh, it's we're almost at the right place anyway.
Very impressed at YouTube's response to this. Now, I'm not saying that spreading this kind of misinformation and connecting these conspiracy theories is wise. I'm not.
No, I mean, spreading things that are false is wrong if you know they're false. Now, but you see, falseness is not defined by a platform or you, Sargon, saying, "Oh, this is false." It's like saying, "Well, 2 + 2 = 4 is false. 2 + 2 = 5 is correct." That's not how you define things. Things are defined through science, through debate, through common sense, and through interaction, through polite, calm interaction with others who might have different ideas. And so this is why what YouTube have done is wrong.
I'm not saying it doesn't have negative effects, but YouTube have essentially officially become a publisher and not a platform now.
All right, this is important. The publisher-platform dichotomy. And this has actually formed the basis of some of the lawsuits against YouTube lately and other social media giants for when they've deplatformed people. Are they a platform or are they a publisher? Because legally the two things are very different. A platform is just basically just that. It's just somewhere where you post your material, and a user of the social media platform is responsible for the content, not the platform. The platform is not legally liable for anything posted there. And a publisher it is. A publisher is like a newspaper. If a newspaper it has an editor, and if the editor allows a journalist to publish something which they then sued for, the newspaper is liable, even though it was the journalist that wrote it. The editor allowed it to be published, therefore the newspaper is liable. It's the editor's fault, not the journalist's. See, so that is the difference. Now, YouTube seem to want the best of both worlds. They see all the worst of both, or the worst. I was going to say the worth of both worlds, like Alan Partridge. The worst of both worlds from our point of view. They want to have all the advantages of being a platform and a publisher with none of the disadvantages, and so. This is kind of what they're doing now, and I understand that if you shout fire in a crowded theatre, that is an example of false information being harmful. It has effects, it has consequences. So that, in a sense, is wrong. But it's a bit of a fuzzy issue, because on the other hand, what if the theatre is on fire? It's just no one can see it yet. Do you see what I mean? Sargon actually addresses this in a minute, but I'll let him carry on.
Where they've decided that no, we are actually going to regulate the information that is broadcast on the platform. Because, I mean, this isn't anything to do with the community standards or bigotry or anything like that. This is to do with just what appears to be outright misinformation.
Yeah, but you see, the thing is, it is within their standards now. See, they've changed their rules. I've talked about this on other videos, where I myself have been shadow banned. YouTube keep altering their terms and conditions. The terms of service now include the suppression of opinions that run contrary to the scientific consensus. That's what they're doing now. The list of rules. I mean, they're to do with hate speech. I mean, again, hate speech. A lot of people have been banned from YouTube for hate speech, but they don't actually define specifically what they mean, because obviously there are already existing laws against threats, against incitement to hatred, for instance, incitement to racial hatred, things like that. There are already existing laws which always been a part of YouTube from the very start. But now they're piling on more and more clauses here and there, to the point where people are being kicked off YouTube for saying, like, you know, white people aren't really evil, are they? Yeah. Or other things such as, you know, not every man is a rapist. These things have been designated hate speech statements, and people who say these things are being kicked off YouTube, and kicked off Facebook, and kicked off Twitter. Now that is where we get into the idea of our publisher, because YouTube are going, they're clutching their pearls and saying, but we're responsible for this because we published this material. You know, I'd be happy to sign any disclaimer they like, taking full responsibility for any, and I mean any, consequences of anything I publish on YouTube or on Facebook or Blogger or anywhere else. I'm happy to do that. But they won't. No, they won't let you. Then they start digging their heels in, because they want censorship. They don't want to get out of jail free clause, which means they can't censor anymore. I'll have to do an entire video about that at some point, because that's a big subject.
But apparently 65,000 people, where does it say? Oh yeah, we're streaming, watching this David Icke interview.
This second interview with David Icke was the most popular thing London Real has ever done. Oh, it's amazing. Their website crashed, not because of censorship, but because so many people were visiting it.
Streamed, with people sending super chats and things like that, and they decided to just scrub the stream directly afterwards, because David Icke falsely claimed there was a link between 5G and health crisis.
They didn't directly afterwards. They did it after 1 hour. The thing went down during the actual stream, and what happened was, if I remember correctly, what happened? People watched the stream and they said it went off during the middle of the stream, and then what happened was London Real recorded it. Then they tried uploading the recording, that was removed as well, and then they put it onto several other platforms such as Facebook, which is where I downloaded it. I went back and I saw that the place I put it on Facebook was vanished, so I downloaded it just in time. Now you can still find it in a couple of places because people keep uploading it. You can't censor this sort of stuff. I personally think London Real should get a BitChute account.
There's no evidence that I can see that supports that at all. The coronavirus appears to be entirely about the biological aspect of it being a virus and it being...
Yeah, we've been through that, Sargon. I'll just skip forward actually a little bit. Where is it now? Yeah, go forward to 8 minutes. Oh, we're there already. Yeah. We've been through this, and I agree with Sargon on that point.
Transmitted from person to person, and China doing nothing to try and contain the spread of this initially, and this is why we're all in quarantine now.
How much we can blame China? Yeah, I mean I don't know enough to answer that question, but I know that it went all over China before there was any attempt to lock down China down. The local area around Wuhan was locked down, where there's this biological research laboratory which may or may not have been the source of this coronavirus. But it's anyway. I've done an entire video about that.
Now, but they've said that they will just delete videos that falsely link the coronavirus symptoms to 5G networks.
Yeah, falsely according to them. So if for example you have evidence that links the coronavirus to 5G, and I'm not saying such evidence exists. As I've said, I myself am pretty dubious about it. But you can't present that evidence because YouTube say you are falsely linking these things. They're doing. We're being the publisher now, and we say you're falsely linking these things. You see what I mean? So they are the ultimate arbiter. And oh blimey, it's ridiculous. I mean, so Anyway, Sargon's going to make a good point. He's let me check my notes. Yeah, it's coming up in a minute.
Now, hopefully they don't just delete this video because I'm saying this is not true.
Well, the same goes for this video I'm making now. Because, I mean, I'm just discussing coronavirus and the 5G link, which, as I'm saying, is it's possible for the reasons I stated, not because it's the cause, but because of the effect it has on the body. I mean, our YouTube, are you going to allow this video to stay up? This is why I have to double everything up on BitChute, and sometimes other places as well.
And I'm trying to show that this is not the case. But who knows? YouTube are not exactly well known for their care and tact here.
You could say that again.
This is something I find deeply concerning because, like, I don't think that YouTube has a monopoly on truth. I don't think they should actually.
They think they do, Sargon. You're right. I don't think they should. I don't think they should have, but they say they have. And I could hear people now. People actually said this. They're a private company, so they can do whatever they want. Well, no, they are a private company, but they enter into a contract with the user. And we are expected to keep our side of the contract. They then completely flout their own. So they don't have a monopoly on truth. They think they do. And they are censoring certain ideas, certain opinions which are completely banned. And this includes some of the opinions that I express on my channel, which is why I've been shadow banned. It's I heard someone being honest actually the other day. I can't remember where it was, but you know that phrase people always used to use. Oh, it's a free country, you know, mate. It's a free country. You know, you walk into a pub and there'd be like an empty booth or something. You say, "Oh, I want to sit down there," and they said, "Go ahead. It's a free country." In a free country, people being free means being able to speak and think as you see fit. And of course, someone was honest enough to say when someone brought this point up. I can't remember. It was a YouTube video. I can't remember. It might have been Stefan Molyneux. I'm not sure. Someone was honest enough to say and comment, "Well, we don't live in a free country. We don't live in that world anymore." And that opens a complete can of worms, doesn't it? Because you could say, "Well, how did that change? How do we go from being a free country to being this?" And the answer is no one knows, because it happens so slowly. It happens so stealthily by gradualism, by the frog in a saucepan method, that every little incremental step was portrayed as being independent of all the others. To quote David Icke, who's the subject of this video, it's the stepping stones technique. All that happens is we reach a certain point and people look back and they say, "I didn't agree to this, how did it happen?" And the answer, unfortunately, is yes, you did. You agreed to every little incremental step, or you didn't oppose these incremental steps. This is how these things happen. This is how we ended up in the part of the EU. And this, unfortunately, seems to be the general way things are going. Now, Kevin Logan, my favourite hate follow, and his sidekick, friend zone kind of dominatrix, Christy Winters, they always say, "But you do have free speech." But the thing is about these free speech activists, as Kevin free speech activists is, they want consequence-free free speech. Well, you can't have that. There's always consequences. And the answer is yes, but the consequences should only be someone like Kevin Logan or Christy Winter saying, "You're talking shit." You know, people say that to me. I can live with those consequences. But the consequences we have now are different. They say, yes, you have free speech, but there's a few hoops you need to jump through first to get it. Like, for example, having your career taken away from you, losing your home, having your wife paid to divorce you. This happened to Kevin Annett. His wife was paid to divorce him by the church, and maybe ending up in jail, like like David Irving, like Ernst Sundell. Having your fellowship and your tenure taken away from you, like Nick Colostrom was. So yeah, you come on, guys, you have free speech, but there are consequences, and these are your consequences. Having your whole life ruined, those are the consequences. Okay, so as long as you don't mind that, you have free speech. And this point is completely lost on the two Ks. Anyway, carry on, Sargon.
Be there to say, and this goes to what Mark Zuckerberg was saying about Holocaust denial on Facebook. It's not that he supports it, but it's that, is it his job to tell people who might hold sincere convictions, as I'm sure some of these morons do, that they simply cannot think this thing and say this thing. And then you've got to balance it with, well, I mean, people are burning down the towers, and it does seem to be inspired by people like Icke and other people who are saying that this is, and not just Icke. He's just a loud.
Yeah, this is a conundrum. I mean, if someone's, but then again, the law there are already laws for these things when it comes to incitement. Incitement to racial hatred. For example, he mentioned Holocaust deniers. Now, it's interesting about what Zuckerberg talked about with this, because I didn't expect this from him. And funnily enough, there's a documentary with David Baddiel, the comedian, where he explores Holocaust revisionism. He does an entire documentary about it, and he even meets some guy from Ireland who he's a radical Holocaust revisionist and says basically nothing happened. And at one point, Baddiel interviews not Zuckerberg, but he interviews the UK head of Facebook, and they have a very interesting debate, which is kind of covered by what Sargon said here, because Baddiel is very keen that these people should be shut down, that Facebook should not publish these things. David Baddiel is very, very keen on the idea that Facebook should act as a publisher. It is responsible for things that he regards as hateful being placed on his platform, on the platform. Facebook should share responsibility for allowing Holocaust revisionists to publish their material on Facebook, and things like that. Now, and he's basically, because Baddiel is Jewish, so he finds this offensive, and yeah, I mean, understandable. But is that a reason? Is that a justification for removing material and censoring certain opinions? Again, is this the equivalent of crying fire in a crowded theatre? Are people going to read Holocaust deniers and then go out and commit hate crimes against Jews, specifically on the information that they gathered? And if that's the case, is it the information itself that therefore is to blame, whether it's true or not? And if it's false, is the solution to censor it? And Sargon's going to come on in a minute and say that, because yeah, I mean, I'm sure the guy who shot up that synagogue in America, I wouldn't be, I'd be very surprised if he was not someone who questioned the official story of the Holocaust. I wouldn't be surprised if he was. But then, therefore, is the solution simply to prevent people, as is the case by law in certain countries, such as Canada, such as France, such as many others, actually, and Austria and places like that, prevent them by law from even discussing it? Is that the solution? Sargon's going to say something about this in a minute, and I'm kind of getting ahead of myself here because Sargon is making this point. But my own view, as far as when I saw the debate between Baddiel and this head of UK's Facebook group, I think the Facebook guy actually made this point very well. I think Baddiel is wrong. He made this point very well. But you can watch the documentary. It's an interesting documentary.
Voice in this conversation, but regular people who are spreading this misinformation. I mean, I just find this really, this is a bad road to go down, isn't it?
That's the point. I mean, I said it now. Don't go out and burn any masts. It's that simple. If this is an electromagnetic weapon, it has to be dealt with. But there's lawful ways. There's ways within the constitution of this nation, the Magna Carta, of dealing with it. Going out and just burning down a mast ain't gonna do any good. It's in a sense, it's giving YouTube the excuse they're looking for. It's the pretext to commit more censorship. So I understand that.
This is just not wise. This is going to end up with YouTube just taking things down arbitrarily, and there'll be no recourse. Of course there's no recourse. There's legally nothing we can do.
But they're doing that already, aren't they? They're already doing that, Sargon. They did it to one of your channels several times. They demonetized him and everything. Oh yeah.
We are just totally at the mercy of YouTube on this subject. And I would probably be wiser not to put this video up at all, because, they might just be like, right, that's it, you spoke about this thing, even if you were saying the thing we wanted you to say, which I suppose I am. But, unsurprisingly, scientists find this to be nonsense. There's no...
Yeah, this is a good point. I mean, this is what I'm going to be thinking as I upload this video. Is this going to end up with this video being taken down? Because, or even maybe a strike on my channel, of course, because this is all done automatically through algorithms, especially now during the lockdown where there's no human operators in the offices. And we know that this artificial intelligence is actually not terribly intelligent. And we know how it makes mistakes. For example, I've had third-party strikes on my channels. I've even had it blocked. I've had some of my roving film reviews blocked in some countries because I include the trailer in them. Because the AI system just sees that I've included some material from another video, therefore it's obviously a copyright violation, without thinking it's a bloody film trailer. It's covered by fair use. The whole point of a film trailer is it's for free distribution so that people watch it and go and see the bleeding film. But you can't explain that to this AI system. This is why maybe the science fiction people were wrong and we'll never have a completely intelligent machine. I don't know. That's a big subject. I mean, Sam Harris covers that a lot. I don't have time to go into it now. But either way, Sargon is right. You're completely at the mercy of these AIs. If you write to YouTube, I've been through this process a couple of times now. You write to them, it takes them about a month to get back to you. If you want your strike removed, you have to dox yourself by sending the person who puts in, for example, a copyright claim. You have to send them your full name and address. I had to do this after that incident in 2015 with the Colonel Holt thing. And you have literally... this would all be solved, of course, if YouTube said, well, we're just a platform. It could all be solved then, wouldn't it? But they won't do it because they like having a pretext to censor.
Connection here. And there's no reason to think there's a connection. There is just a coincidence. There is just an overlap here. The correlation does not equal causation in this regard. The same is being done on WhatsApp.
Yeah, we don't know that the masked attacks were done by people who saw David Icke. So I see exactly what he means.
Because why not? This Facebook.
Yeah, WhatsApp's exactly the same. What you'll find is that these social media giants tend to work together. It's like when they banned Alex Jones, he was banned from all of them at once. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, the lot. They everything except Instagram. I think they caught up a bit later. Alex today is just on BitChute. But this is. I know this is to do with the lawsuit against him. There was a class action lawsuit against him by some people who claim to be the parents of the Sandy Hook victims, and that was I think what inspired it. But it's interesting. Well, you know, whatever the rights and wrongs of it, whatever how it happened, it happened on all of them at once. It's like there's a coordinating force between them. Like you get the Zuckerbergs and the people in charge of Google and the people in charge of all these others. They're sort of like phoning each other up and saying, right, we're going to do him next. On major high publicity cases, that's certainly what's happening.
Owned app, and it's one of those things. It's like, okay, this is big tech now saying we are going to start setting what you can say and what you can consider reality to be.
Exactly.
Again,
yes.
I really don't agree with them doing this.
Neither do I, Sargon. And you know, this is not, in a sense, what we're looking at here, what you're talking about here and what I'm talking about here with this 5G stuff. It's just one example of many instances when they've done this, and you know that because they've done it to you, and they've done it to people you know, and they've done it to people I know.
I understand why they would do it, but I think that this is a bad precedent that is going to continue, and it's going to, I think, not stop here. But more importantly, I think that instead of censoring everything and shutting things down, maybe why not get an expert and get David Icke and get them to sit down on, if you can find a reputable news station, and and just explain it to them. Ask them why there would be this conspiracy. What's going on? You know, try and actually break into the bubble that they're operating in and actually talk them out of it.
Precisely. This is how you handle everything that we talk about. Everything I talk about on my channel, that everyone else talks about on their channels, which is considered fringe, taboo subjects. You do it through open discussion. Things which are wrong can actually be addressed. Things which are wrong can be addressed, and they can be basically deconstructed, and anyone with a bit of intellectual honesty will accept that deconstruction as real. If they can't be deconstructed, then, well, maybe it could be the conspiracy theorists are right. And then it's up to the people who believe in the mainstream narrative of these subjects to change their mind and accept that they have something to learn and they have something to maybe reassess. And this is why. This is all these things about censorship. This is why it's. I think a lot of censorship is done by people who actually know they're in the wrong about something, but they can't admit it. And this goes for the Ramonas in the Brexit debate. They were very, when they started calling people like me and all the others, and Nigel Farage and everyone else, fascist, evil, and stuff like this. They started attacking the meeting. They just didn't like what these people were doing. They wanted to stay in the EU. They knew they'd lost the rational argument. They knew they'd lost the moral argument, and so therefore they're just going to, rather than just being an adult about it and accepting that, they just decided to go crazy and just still try to enforce their will regardless. When enough people do that, when enough people want to enforce their will because they want it against what they know to be true and what they know to be fair, you have the ingredients of barbarism. And literally, you're talking about the end of civilization when enough people do that. I'll just check the camera's not falling off. And that is really what. That's the implications of what we're talking about here, which is why Sargon is absolutely right. There needs to be an open discussion about this. And I understand that people won't like that. I mean, David Baddiel, of course, is Jewish. He had members of his family at the Auschwitz and other places. I understand that he finds that offensive. Well, I'm afraid that's too bad. I find it offensive too when people say, that, white people are evil and things like that, and so white people should all be put into camps, or they should be made to live in one small island, or things like that, because white people have done this, white people have done that. Yes, that's horrible, but I don't have a right to prevent people saying those things. I believe that the solution is for an open discussion about that subject. I will defend white people in an open debate if they like. So that, I think, is the solution, because when this is done, the truth comes out. The truth will emerge through that process, I believe. And I believe that truth can do no harm. I don't believe that correctness and fairness. How can correctness and fairness be in any way bad? How can it do harm, as opposed to the opposite? I think Sargon's going to. I seem to be getting a bit ahead of myself, probably because I've already watched this video. But Sargon's going to make this point himself. Hang on.
Because censoring them will just make them think that they are right and that you have something to hide. This is not going to deprogram people.
Yes.
If anything, I think it's going to make it worse. And as I said, they're already burning down these masts. So let's not just make them think that they're right and reinforce that worldview. Anyway, if you would like to support our channel.
Okay, that's absolutely correct. And that is a very, very important point. The point is that censorship does not suppress. You see, if ideas are censored, it makes me see when people do this to me and they say I can't talk about certain things, like it's like what happened to me at the hospital. I mean, I was essentially removed from hospital portering. I was forcibly removed from hospital portering because I was expressing certain opinions about certain subjects that were regarded as offensive, inappropriate, and stuff like that. Now, by kicking me out of my job, kicking me out of my profession, which I've been in for 23 years, where I provided 23 years of dedicated, trouble-free service, and removing me from that, how are people? Am I more or less likely to think that I was right or wrong about the things I was saying? Anyone else who witnessed that, the other porters. Now, I'll tell you what, right? That red pilled a lot of people, because now there's several porters have actually got in touch with me since then, and they want to talk about things such as UFOs. They want to talk about paranormal subjects. They want to talk about these radical political ideas, to do with the New World Order and stuff like that. Was my discharge from the NHS possibly an inspiration for them to start exploring the ideas I was talking about? Wouldn't it have been better simply to leave me be and encourage everyone to discuss what I had to say openly? That's an important point Sargon's making. if it's a bad idea, if for example, if it's an idea that makes people hate, for example, I've already mentioned like the idea that white people are evil. I already mentioned Holocaust revisionism, things like that, and how it might inspire people to commit hate crimes. If that is true, then banning it won't help. It will just fester in the underbelly of society. It will just prey on the most vulnerable, the most malleable, the most easily influenced people, the most easily led people. Who will say, the people influencing them will say, "Look, you see, you're not allowed to talk about this. It must be true. Otherwise, they wouldn't ban it, would they?" And we live in a post-truth world where morality and rationality doesn't matter. It reinforces that, because you'll say, well, look, this is the world we live in now, and this is a part of it. This is the stuff that's off limits, because they don't want you to know, because no one cares what's true or not. You see, we live in this dictatorship where there's no free speech, so that the stuff you're not to talk about is the true stuff. Do you see what I mean? Do you understand what I'm talking about? So the answer, as Sargon said, is complete, total openness. So anyway, that's another it's an interesting video by Sargon, of which I sort of half agreed and half disagreed with him. So I don't know. It's not really a critical video, I suppose. It is just when he talks about certain things. But anyway, thank you all of you for watching Hapanwo TV. Hospital Porters, pride and dignity. Stop the New World Order.